Good afternoon, Lisa and David. It's Nigel Kibble from Dream Design Property. I hope you're both well. Look, as you're probably aware, the purpose of today's meeting really is to have a chat about your current financial position and to come up with some ideas for your overall future, especially since you've got two kids, 15 and 14. I believe a girl and a boy, the pigeon pair, as they say. I'm in much the same position. I've got a daughter who's 23 and a son who's 21, as a matter of fact. So, look, I hope you're well. And the first thing we're going to do is have a quick look at some numbers, just to confirm those numbers, because what's really important here, it's absolutely essential that before moving forward, we understand what your current position is. So here's the thing. If you're looking at retiring, and I think you've put down on a list that you want $120,000 a year in retirement, what's absolutely essential is that we need to look at where you're actually going to be if you simply stay on the path you are at the moment. Because it might well be that, you're already on that path and you don't need that sort of return. But you've said 120 a year, so let's have a quick look at some of these numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring something on the screen for you to have a look at. And what we're going to do is just have a look at some of the basic numbers. So I've got your residence being at 1.2 million with a current mortgage on the property of 350. David, you've got a super of 220 and Lisa a little bit less with 150, but still a pretty healthy balance. So much so that there's a pretty strong chance that you could potentially look at a self-managed super fund. And that might be worth getting a financial planner involved just to have a look at this and offer you a bit of independent advice on that front. If we look at the various, your income, I believe, is actually 90, not 80. My apologies there. And gives you a total income of 165 between you. So we still have to ascertain whether this is a viable proposition for you. As we can see, 120,000, which you've suggested, isn't 120,000 in 15 years' time, but it's actually 156. So we're only allowing 2% a year for inflation to come up with that figure, but it's important that we do this. And as you've said, you're prepared to work to your 65. Well, you've got 15 years, which is really 1.5 property cycles to go. So you've certainly got quite a lot going for you. Let's have a look at the overall plan here. And what we can see here at the moment is your 1.2 million is the value of your property. When we get to the age of 65, with what you've got at the moment, you're still under $1 million with about 942. So why that's important is because if you had $1 million today, that's going to generate about $50,000 in income. So if we're going ahead 15 years from now, we're talking about that probably only being worth about 40,000, if that, 35 to 40,000 in today's money. So you still have quite a large shortfall in terms of if you're wanting to get to around 120,000 a year. So if we're to come close to that, it's obviously very important that we take a look at a couple of other scenarios. Now, it's obvious that at the moment there are questions about things like interest rates. Is now the right time to buy? I think you asked that of me just before. And the simple solution is, in my view, I think it's a very good time to be buying. The reason being is the government's allowing 712,000 people into Australia just over the next 2 years. If you put 3 people per household, that's 220,000 properties that you need just to keep up with immigration demand alone. We're not going to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to build that many homes in the first place. So there's 2 different things that are going to happen. The first thing is we're going to have the worst rental crisis in the country's history. And it's once I'm suggesting the media they're under-exaggerating how bad the problem's actually going to be. We're going to see the value of properties rise dramatically, particularly in this sort of under $1 million plus range. We're going to see prices rise quite dramatically over the next 12 months, simply because of the old demand and supply ratio. There's far more demand than there is supply. We also know that rents are going to remain high and rental properties will remain in demand. And finally, and I believe that the RBA has overcooked the current situation, and I think interest rates are far too high. I think what we're going to see is rates will start to move down again, if not by the end of this year, then certainly by early next. And we'll be looking at considerably lower rates over the next 12 to 18 months. So as an investor, the good news is that if you're able to lock into something today at today's prices, you're going to benefit from a financial growth point of view and obviously from an interest rate point of view and a rental point of view as well. So it really is an excellent time to be coming into the market at the moment. Now, look at the people, unfortunately, that bought in 12 months ago. Some of those people are a little panicked because the rates have gone up so much. But even there, we're able to show people how they can hang on and how they'll be able to manage. How does that sound so far? Okay. So the idea of this is to develop a plan for you so you know where you're going, as I've said, over the next 10 to 15 years. So what I'm going to do, just as an example, I'm going to pop a property in here at, say, 650. And, oops, sorry, I put that in the wrong spot. It should access the rental amount. So it should actually say 680. And I'll put a property in here at about 650. Now, already we can see that that has taken the property the value there just with one property to well over $1 million. So that's already made quite a large difference to what you're able to do. The reality is that we could look at potentially a property in a self-managed super fund. And the benefit for you there is that if you have a property in a self-managed fund and you hold the property to your 65, which is what you're talking about, you don't pay capital gains tax in retirement. So you could sell the property, make 400,000, and we're talking here at 400, and this is only based purely at a growth rate of 4% per annum, which is pretty low, considering in Melbourne it's actually been 8.95% since 1967. So I think there are some pretty strong signs here that if you keep it for that amount of time, you make 400 or 500 on the money. That goes straight into your super without any tax being paid on it. So I've got a financial planner can explain that to you in more detail. My job really by the end of our session is to make sure that we put in exactly what you need in terms of the number of properties required to hit that sort of 1 to 120 sort of bracket in retirement. And you'll find that it's not going to be that many. It might be one more in 3 or 4 years' time, potentially one in super. And I think that that's going to present a pretty good picture. So by the time we're finished, my job is to actually come up with a finished plan that's going to show that end result. So do you have any questions? Okay, no, that's fine. So the next point is that we're going to go through finance. And what will happen here is our finance people will take a look at the raw numbers that we've sent, and we'll make sure that you're actually in a position to move forward in the first place. Because what's absolutely critical to us is it's one thing to make a recommendation, but the last thing we want to have happen is to find that you can't afford the property as well. So once we've done that, the process will be that we'll have a financial planner in to have a chat. And once the planner's chat, you then need to make a decision whether you think a self-managed super fund is the way to go or not. And then I'll come up with some property recommendations to get you started. So obviously, we might be making a suggestion that you need 2 or 3 properties over the next 3 or 4 years, but we're only talking about 1 or possibly 2 if you're looking at a self-managed super fund. How does that sound to you? Great. Well, look, it's been great talking to you, and I'll look forward to catching up with you at the next session.